Tonight, we're taking a closer look at one of the biggest frustrations right now with the coronavirus. It's been over 3 weeks since the federal government recommended states expand the group of people eligible to receive a vaccine. But in Louisiana, the age limit is still 70 and above. Paul Murphy reports we may as early as tomorrow hear if Governor John Bel Edwards plans to open up vaccine distribution.
Louisiana has steadily increased the number of places people can receive a COVID vaccine. The shots are now available at more than 400 locations across the state. But unlike many other states, Louisiana has not expanded the pool of people eligible for a vaccine.
Well, my question is, why is it taking so long?
A lot of us are saying why? Why are we not following what is recommended in this country?
The federal government wants states to offer the vaccine to anyone 65 years and older, and to people under 65 who have certain medical conditions that put them at greater risk for catching COVID-19. But in Louisiana, the vaccine is still only available to those 70 and older, frontline workers, people with kidney failure, and people who live and work at nursing homes and other long-term care facilities. North Shore real estate agent Claudia Seligman wants to know when her age group can get the vaccine.
I have friends from college that are all about my age, 68, 69. They live in Florida, they live in Texas, they live in New York, and they've all gotten the vaccines, both doses.
Henry Lewis is a retired physical therapist from Destrehan. He thinks there should be no limitations on who can get a vaccine.
And this thing can get out of control in a minute, because if you see like last week, what's happened down at Bourbon Street, I mean, this thing can spread in a minute. So while we wait, other states is going on giving people the vaccine.
Governor John Bel Edwards says vaccine supply is the limiting factor in Louisiana and other states. In a written statement, the governor's office said, Governor Edwards is encouraged by the increase in vaccines the state has started receiving, and that will factor into how soon more groups can be added. The governor is expected to announce possible changes to the state's vaccine rollout during his coronavirus briefing tomorrow. Paul Murphy, Eyewitness News.
The state health department reports just over 100,000 people have completed both doses of the COVID vaccine series. That's the blue line you see on this graph. In addition to that, about 280,000 people have received their first dose. That's the green line. The vaccination rate has slowed since last week with 11,000 fewer shots given.
Well,